Alina Congreve is here, and she has been managing the New Jerusalem project as a whole, and she'll tell you all about it.
Well,
a little bit about it, and then I can carry on.
So yeah, my name's Alina, and I'm a resident of the first new town. So I live in Stevenage, and that's something the town's very proud of, to be a new town and to be the first new town. But to be honest, in Stevenage, we were a bit slow off the mark, and colleagues in Harlow and Basildon actually built some of the first houses. And like Redditch, it was a town before it was a new town. So in Stevenage's case, it was a town on the Great North Road. So people used to stop there on the way north. There were coaching inns. It was a small and lively market town. Some people say that new towns don't have any heritage in them, but really nothing could be farther from the truth. And I think you're quite lucky in Redditch coming that little bit later than us in Stevenage. So by the 1960s, there was a bit more awareness about heritage in the public, but also some of the really progressive views that were coming forward from planning at that time within new towns. So more of your heritage was perhaps valued and captured and brought into the new town. Indeed, the Development Corporation, as we found in some of the records looking a few weeks ago, had some of the very first Heritage Open Days before it was even a thing nationally. They were encouraging people to learn about their heritage, holding events, music, talks, workshops. So before National Heritage Open Days was even a gleam in someone's eye, the Development Corporation in Redditch was encouraging both existing long-term residents, but also people moving in from outside to learn about and value and start to think about what made their place, what made it special. And there's certainly a lot to celebrate in Redditch in terms of heritage, from its Victorian past and its sort of premier role in needlemaking, back to the Abbey and its medieval heritage, and even as we found out the discoveries of some material from go back to the Bronze Age. Yeah. And a lot of that's sponsored by the Development Corporation, so it being really supportive of archaeology, of uncovering those finds and engaging the public with them. So we're delighted to be here on Heritage Open Days, celebrating both the rich past history of Redditch, but also its more recent history as well with the new town. And it's fascinating to see so many of you here today who've actually been part of that story, that new town story. And I've got the slightly daunting but really enjoyable job of bringing some of this heritage together. So right back in 2000, many of us realised we had these fascinating collections of new town materials, but that they weren't really very usable. So when the Development Corporations got wound up, and we have someone here who's actually involved in the wind-up of the Development Corporations, lots of their working papers and photographs and brochures and diagrams were hastily packed away into boxes, and then they were left in basements, not quite safe, but not really very usable. So what this project has done is to unlock those, to make those so you can find stuff and use stuff and read stuff and enjoy it once again. So Zoe and her colleagues in Worcester have been working really hard over the last 2 years to catalogue that material, to conserve it where it's starting to deteriorate, and to make it available for everyone. So this project has been funded by the Wellcome Trust, and you might have heard of Wellcome for their medical research. So they're looking for cures for cancer and other serious diseases. But the Wellcome Trust also gets, as those planners did right early on, about the links between our built environment, where we live, our health, our well-being, and the built environment. So Wellcome very much sees the connection. It's not just all about drugs and medicine. Our health is intimately tied into where we live, our homes, our workplaces, and the wider built environment that we live in. So the Wellcome Trust are very generously funded for the collections of 11 new towns to be conserved and catalogued. That gives us a bit of a sort of a critical mass, so hopefully in future those collections will help researchers both keep what's good about the new towns, but also make sympathetic changes where they're needed. But also, if there are new towns planned, both in this country but also abroad, to reflect on and learn what's good about these new towns, and then take those lessons forward when we're building new towns. And new towns are certainly a lot more topical than perhaps they were when we started this project, but there are important learnings that can come from Redditch and those other new towns, and we can't learn those things unless we can access all of that material. I think that's all I got to say, but I will be around all day. So if any of you do want, and my background's in planning, built environment, housing. So if you want to have a chat to me, I'm not rushing off after this, and be really keen to hear some of your stories. But I'll hand over to Zoe a bit more, who's been working with the Redditch collection specifically, to say a bit more about your work and some of the exciting things you found out while working with the Newtown records.
Thanks to you, Alina. Yeah, so I'm Zoe Vanwell and I am one of the archivists. And I have my colleagues here, Alvi, Vicky and Maggie, you may have already seen. And Maggie is the senior archivist who manages the collections we hold. So as I say, we're a county-wide service. So I wanted just to talk a little bit about the project. New Jerusalem's Unlocking Newtown Archives. So, as Alina mentioned, we worked alongside 8 partners, and there were 11 Newtown archives covered. So these are Basildon, Bracknell, Crawley, Cumbran, Newton, Aycliffe, Peterlee, Redditch, Runcorn, Shannon, Stevenage and Warrington. So that gives you an idea. This is the UK-wide coverage project. And then Alina did mention some of the aims of the project, but they were really to do with, because we're working in partnership, making the most of that and building connections between the archives. Of course, we want to engage new audiences with the archives as well, and making connections between community groups, individuals, and hopefully intergenerational connections, which I actually saw a little boy with his grandmother looking at the displays earlier, so I think that's working. Hopefully, we want young researchers who maybe are studying with relevant subjects, social subjects, planning, or public health to be using the archives as well. And they can be used to inform planning, regeneration decisions and public health planning as well. The ghost of Redditch Development Corporation. Yeah.
There's a few ghosts around here. It's a bit better with the door closed.
Yeah. Well, we are here to talk about heritage, aren't we? So, thanks, Oliver. This, by the way, is Oliver, our senior archivist for digital preservation.
Hello.
So we are
comes in
well
handy.
represented here today. Yeah, there we are. So our service is part of Worcestershire County Council. Okay, the Newtown concept. It was all about making essential amenities close to where people were living, so they didn't have to commute long distances, and really it helped to improve the well-being or ensure the well-being of the population that were moving to Redditch Newtown. So we have things like green spaces, outdoor spaces, employment opportunities close by. There were several industrial sites created, as well as the residential areas, and we are here in Kingfisher Shopping Centre, but there were local shopping amenities as well, and of course things for families like play parks. Although we've had a conversation about that photo in the past, and we think perhaps it would have been created slightly differently with health and safety considered. It's a brick slope which children slide down, which perhaps would be reconsidered if it was being designed today, but it's quite a fun photo all the same. So with regards to Redditch itself, this is the basic plan designed by Redditch Development Corporation. The town was designated in 1964, but this plan we think is from 1966. And you can see the brown areas are the residential areas, and then you can use the key to work out how the space was used and where the industrial sites, where the other amenities were, and how they were kind of spaced out in order to make things, I suppose, life easier for the people living here. Okay, so just thinking a little bit about the legacy of Newtown planning. We know, looking at Redditch Newtown archives that were created by the Redditch Development Corporation, Commission for the New Towns, English Partnerships so the successors as well. We know there was so much planning, statistic gathering, surveys were carried out, and they actually spoke to people on foot. They asked their opinion, and all that information is held in the archives. You can actually see people's responses to the surveys. And the basic plan you just saw, a copy of that is tucked into the proposal report that was created alongside it. And that report brings together all of the statistics they've gathered and the kind of workings of how to get this concept in, make it a reality. So I think it's incredible, and it's kind of like an example of how to do it, really. So for that reason, the archives are an incredible resource for people to use, especially as Alina said, we've got a renewed interest in people wanting to live their best life, a healthy lifestyle. So the archives can really help with that. I think you were probably all gathered together, but I was going to get a show of hands of anyone who worked for Redditch Development Corporation. I'm kind of looking in this direction. Yeah, it's amazing to see you here. Thank you ever so much.
And also it's carried out very much in collaboration. So I think some of you also work for the council or county council as well. Or
Yes,
Urban District Council.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then is anyone here who actually lived through the development of the new town? Amazing. Yeah, so you've got real life stories to share, and it's going to be really brilliant talking to you as well today. Good to see you here. Okay, so getting to work. So we wanted to make these archives more accessible. So we did that through cataloguing 4 main collections were a priority. So we reboxed them into archival standard packaging, which is non-acidic, and you can see us working there. So the kind of information that is in the records, as I've said, there was a town centre survey from 1968. There were several other surveys, obviously. Site investigation reports, soil reports, trial pit investigations, so all to do with the foundations of all this new development. We've catalogued marking material, photographs, maps and plans, and then information about the industrial estates, tenants, financial information, contracts, that sort of thing. So here are some photos of the archives in our repositories, and again these repositories we're lucky enough to have, they were made bespoke, and they are up to date with current storage standards. And so we went about arranging the records to maintain the original order that they were created and used. Creating the list and getting that into our catalogue, which is an online database, and I've mentioned the packaging as well. So you can see lots of these boxes. There were other size boxes and different types of packaging depending on what they are, because obviously some are maps and so on. As part of our work, we conserved, I say we, our conservator isn't here with us today, but yes, we conserved over 450 plans, and a large majority of that was for Essex Record Office that holds Harlow and Basildon Development Corporation archives, so you can see us working in partnership there. We have digitised over 12,000 photos, that's an awful lot. Actually a lot of them are pre-Newtown developments, it looks like, and then also a lot of marketing material and the visits, construction as well. So it's been fantastic to look through those. So here's just a small example of the photos. So we have Unicorn Hill shops, the market and bus station. This is the street scene showing the back of Woolworths. I mean, you may remember, it might be too long ago. Patent Ferrell Works. So it's interesting to see the kind of interior of the factories and how that's changed if you think of a modern day factory, for instance. This is the interior line shop at Alcock's factory. This is a favourite of ours amongst the archivists. Spencer's surgical needles, so it looks like a proper workshop with them manufacturing them. Lower Grinstead Farm and Butty Farm. And that's the marketplace looking down Ulster Street. And then Kingfisher Shopping Centre. And its construction. Okay, so we catalogued archives that were uncatalogued, but we also went about retro conversion of our inventories. So these are hard copy volumes, bound volumes, and they list the contents of collections we hold. They don't match current standards for archive cataloguing, unfortunately, and they are in hard copy, held in the search room, where we're based in the Hive at Worcester. So it does limit the amount of people that can get to us and use them, and they're not particularly user-friendly to find the information you need. So the idea is to get them typed up. We can manipulate the data, add in any extra details we need to bring it up to standards, and then import it into our online catalogue. And then the whole world is able to access the holdings, and it encourages their use. So this is quite a large aspect of the project. So there are 860 pages of the inventory books, and 26,000 items are included in the volume. So if you can imagine the spreadsheet there, there'll be 26,000 rows at least. So it's going to take time, it's ongoing, but we're working with some really important volunteers helping us to do that, and we really appreciate their work. We couldn't do it without them. We also have done retro conversion for Cumbran Newtown Archives, and that's held at Gwent Archives. So this is our online catalogue. People can search by keyword, and once you click into an archive, you can see in relation to other series of records that were created as well. Okay, so this was meant to be a kind of fun slide in which I could just talk about a few of the things I learned along the way. So some of these things take with a pinch of salt, it's just me having a giggle. But so we know the Cistercian monks that moved here to Redditch and created the abbey worked incredibly hard. They cleared oak and a scrub and actually changed the course of the river, and we know the Redditch Development Corporation did that as well in order to reduce the risk of surface flooding with all this new development and the clay kind of soil that Redditch has. So yeah, but Redditch Development Corporation weren't the first to move the river course. That was really interesting to see that happened. For me, I'm obviously female, and I just really liked that there was a female on the original Redditch Development Corporation board. This is Rona Cash, and she later was given an OBE. There were other females on the board as the board members refreshed as well. But I mean, it was a bit surprising for me to come across that, and I like that fact, so I thought I'd include it. Industry played a major role for the Redditch Development Corporation. They really understood the necessity of it in bringing employment opportunities into the new town and making it this hub they wanted it to be. So as part of that, they took marketing incredibly seriously. They promoted the new town internationally, and you can see in this brochure it's translated into the different languages. They went on international visits, and companies came here as well to view the new town. They spent around £600,000 as part of their strategy to attract high technology and service industries. and they saw that as a way of making up for the loss of metal-based industries, which I think would be on the slides I showed earlier, which were in decline at the time. So as part of this marketing and promotion, there were lots of visits from the great and the good. So this shows Queen Elizabeth II visiting in 1983. Prince Philip actually visited to open the Ecumenical Centre. There was another royal who visited as well. He was the traditional ruler of the Ashanti region of Ghana. He was Otomfuo Opokuwe II. Two prime ministers as well. So Edward Heath and James Callaghan as well. So they're here in the Kingfisher Shopping Centre. Alina mentioned that the development corporations were really keen to advocate well-being and education of the population as well. So this is an example of them trying to do that. So this is a school pack. So it's aimed at children, and within it there are kind of questions and exercises, and they are about the figures and quantities, distances around the new town and population movement, that sort of thing. So it's getting the kids to actually think about the design of the new town.
We'd love to meet some teachers who'd use that, wouldn't we? That'd be very
That
cool.
would be amazing, see how they put it into practice, yeah. Another example is this nature trail. So this is a bound volume actually. They obviously wanted to keep a copy of it. It's in the archives. And within it they are taking the children through a trail and getting them to understand the types of species of plants and animals that they would come across. Redditch Development Corporation created an exhibition for the basic plan and their proposals. So the College for the Blind visited as part of that, and they created this braille version of the basic plan, so it's interesting to compare the two. And I'd never come across anything like this before. I think it's incredible to see, not that I read braille, but I do think it's incredible to have that in the archives. The Redditch Development Corporation had, and this is something Brian told me when you visited and I spoke to you, but you explained they had a large room just for their reference library. So they had examples of the brochures they created, the archaeological reports they'd helped to create, architectural publications as well as all their reports they'd commissioned and all that. So it looked like they were taking things seriously, and they were keeping things to hand to refer to as their plans were developing. But it wasn't just the Redditch Development Corporation that were keen to make a difference for the people living in Redditch. So we know, for instance, there is one special lady, Madge Tilsley. Some of you may be aware of her. She worked with a whole cross-section of communities. She helped found the Smallwood Residents Association, which apparently is an area of the old town, and they felt it didn't really compare with the new developments, and they wanted to bring it up to the new town standards. So she did a lot of work there, but as I say, with a whole cross-section. She's here stood outside the Link Centre, which, looking at the information on the reverse of this photo, it seems to be a centre for the unemployed. So I think I've correctly identified that as being Madge Tilsley. So I was flicking through, yeah, I'm glad you agree. I was like, that's Madge. Tenuous link here, but she, in a short biography we've got, it says she worked for a spring factory, and springs are used in this Anglepoise lamp. So I just thought this design of lamp was something IKEA created and sold en masse. But as I've read, It was created in the 30s in Bath, the design, and then it was manufactured here for the first time. Now, let me just see which industrial estate it was made on. You might know. It was made on the Enfield Industrial Estate here in Redditch, so I think that's...
I've got one of those.
Have you? Well, it kind of makes me want to have one now. So yeah, a bit of Redditch heritage. Yes, so this was a bit of fun. I just thought I'd point out Redditch folk aren't afraid of a bit of competition, especially on Pancake Day. And it, again, this is in the Kingfisher Centre. We're having a bit of fun on Pancake Day. And some things remain, at least in part, a mystery. This is the uncovering of the Bronze Age timber, but it was originally thought to be, it was initially termed the Ipsy log boat, and it was something our archaeological service mentioned to us. They said, if you come across anything about the Ipsy log boat, we'd love to see the files. So we actually did discover material, and Clive, who worked for the corporation, has brought in material relating to it as well. So yeah, so later tests were carried out, and it turns out it's Bronze Age, and it's potentially not a vessel in its own right, but it would have been used to aid flotation of a larger vessel or as an outrigger. Okay, so what next? Well, you've been to our stand today, and we hope to speak to more of you throughout the day. So you can join in with the activities. We have our online inquiry on our page on our website, Explore the Past, so you can visit us to ask any questions you need to about the archives. We have lots of ideas, don't we, about what we could do next, so stay tuned to hear about any news that we might put out on our social media, and you can also check in with the New Jerusalem's website homepage as well.